1. Not sure if I'm a schizo or just being haunted, but here goes. Be me. 21. Move out of my parents' house and into an apartment complex. There's 6 apartment buildings, but used to be 7. The 7th one was burned down in a fire, don't think anything of it. Several nights in a row of literal entities standing over my bed, and laughing/screaming right in my face. Pots and pans slamming in my kitchen. Shadowy figures moving at night. Turns out that fire was caused by a psychopath who went on a rampage. He killed an elderly couple, then came back to his apartment, killed his mom, and tried to burn her body in the oven. Long story short, the oven caught on fire, causing the whole building to go up in flames. Several people died. Italmakesenseno.jpg. At night start walking around naked, tugging on my dick, randomly dotting in random directions to keep the ghost on their toes. Keep saying shit like getcha some, where you at bitches. And I do pose routines at random while calling myself a specimen, get holy water from my Catholic friend and get some natural salt from the interwebs. Mix holy water and salt together in a bowl and soak my hands in it before bed every night. Start shadow boxing until I sweat. I tell the ghost I will fuck you up on the ethereal plane, motherfucker, don't test me. Haven't had any hauntings since I did all that. 2. This is a genuine story. Everything that happened, I promise, is real and has been giving me nightmares/bad luck ever since. Go hiking last year with friends and brothers. Some park on the border of Indiana and Kentucky called Clifty Falls. Very unfit but love nature, so went anyway. Have a genuinely good time, but 3 hours into hike start to slow down and get separated. Climbing up steep path, can't breathe well. Decided to sit and catch my breath. Group is maybe 7 minutes ahead of me. Alone.jpg. Enjoying view at first, but suddenly everything gets quiet. Like, too quiet. Like when an animal is hunting prey. Shit. All of a sudden I feel weird, like I'm in a dream. Rhythmic vibrations in ground, almost like drumming. Not dehydrated, still have water, can't be in my head. Start speed walking up the steep path in attempt to catch up with group, ground still vibrating like drum. Stop, nearly have heart attack. What the fuck is that? GIF. See incredibly tall figure with antlers dancing in the trees. Dance is almost ceremonial like, unlike anything I've seen, had to be at least 10 feet tall. Long slender black body, big hands, tiny eyes. It's just fucking dancing, looking at me. Captivated, but also terrified. Start walking off the path towards it, but feel sudden tap on my shoulder. It's my brother, rest of group not far behind. Everyone is pissed. WTF. Dancing antler fucker is gone, so is drumming. Everyone accuses me of going ahead of the group. Swear it was other way around. Don't mention what the fuck I just saw because they won't take me seriously. Ever since that day I have had bad luck. Last job, got corona, got in fight with BF, and had to get gallbladder removed. My rabbit is afraid of me. Still here drumming at night and scratching in the attic. Sketched a pic for you all. 3. Be me, age 11 or so. Belief, living in rural Ontario at the time. Buddy of mine has a forest that his dad carved a bunch of trails through, and built a fort in for him. Somewhat overcast afternoon, Buddy and I going off trail, through tall brush, taller than us. Out of the corner of my eye, I spot a head and shoulders rise over the brush, and go back down. Head and shoulders were completely black, like a shadow. Ah shit nigga. Wave. Ignore it. Think it was a trick of the light. We exit the brush, and get on the main trail, about 8 to 10 feet wide. Take a few steps when something runs from the brush on our left, into the brush on our right. No noise. Brush undisturbed. Looked like a human shadow, hunched over, running. I look at my body. My body looks at me. You see that? Yup. Turn and run back to his house as fast as we can. His mom said it was probably a coyote, but it was dead silent, and definitely not coyote-shaped. To this day, over a decade later, I don't know what I saw, exactly, but I'm still afraid to go into the woods alone. 4. Awesome story. I have an old family story too. My grandpa told it to me, just before he died. Family's originally from Ireland. For those that don't know, Irish people used to believe that fairies would steal babies and replace them with fairy children. These children were called changelings, and they were small like kids, but they looked like old men. Grandpa's a young sprat, about 13. One of the neighbor women comes to his house crying. Tells his mom she's got a changeling. Grandpa's mother is a local witch that people think can see fairies. She visits the neighbor's house. Grandpa has to go with her. In the lady's crib is a little baby with the face of an old man. It's wrinkled and has brown face with a large nose. Grandpa listens as mom tells the neighbor what to do. Tonight, take a corn husk and walk up to the fairy fort. Fairy forts were hills where people believed the fairies lived. There was one nearby. The woman is not happy to hear this. Threatened to light the corn husk on fire, and to burn down the hill with it. Threaten this 3 times and your baby will be returned to you. They go home. The next day the woman comes over with her baby and thanks Grandpa's mom. Grandpa listens as the woman says, I was so scared. When I threatened to burn the hill down, a tall man appeared and told me to go home. He told me, your baby is returned. Do not return here with your corn or fire. Then he walked away quickly. Grandpa is curious and asks to look at the baby. Its face is completely changed. It's a normal, smiling baby with a cute little baby face. 5. There is this crazy lady in my city. I've seen her often roaming the street where I live. She has this old jacket and pants looking like they are back from the 80s when East Germany was still part of the Soviet Union. Most of the time she carries an old leather suitcase, sometimes just a plastic bag. Most have some form of oct. Walking a few steps, turning around or walking a few steps backwards. Resting, repeat, steps on the busy street, in front of cars, turning back, repeat. I often see her, when I leave for work, or deep in the night, out of my window. One day I was just leaving for work, putting on shoes and someone rang my doorbell, thinking, whoever is trying to speak to me will be at the door of the building in 20 seconds, when I will step outside. Walk outside. No cars parked in front. Turn right. Nothing. Turn left. You got to be fucking kidding me. Crazy lady 10 meters from me, strolling down the sidewalk. Decide to leave her be. FFW a couple of weeks. Have a dream. Nightmare. I was walking past the women with the suitcase. She talks to me. Never heard her say anything in real life. She says, look, she grabs in her suitcase, reveals a kitchen knife and stabs me in the heart. I die in my dream. Wake up. Get to the kitchen. Look outside. No. Fuck you, bitch. The crazy lady stands on the other side of the street, looking right at me. Fuck this shit. 6. Be uncle. Be buying shit in an old market, huge, crowded clusterfuck of stalls on the streets. There is a super narrow street through which both cars and people can move. Huge truck comes in. 5I/O cousin falls on the street. Truck can't see her. Weird guy wearing a white suit comes out of nowhere. Calmly walks toward cousin. Truck stops on its tracks. He picks up cousin and hands him to uncle. Cousin used to cry whenever she was close to strangers, but this dude has a really calming aura. He turns around and disappears into crowd. Next story. Be celebrating uncle's birthday. Talking about spooks while little cousins play in the garden. They start screaming about an spaceship. Everyone runs to the garden. See a small, white dot in the sky. It's probably a plane. It suddenly stops. A group of smaller dots emerge from it, like a fish giving birth. They all continue advancing at the exact same speed. They eventually disappear behind a cloud. The same clouds start thundering and raining almost immediately. Another one about UFOs. Grandpa dies. Uncles and dad go to the city where he lived for his funeral. The day before, one of his cousins invite them for dinner. They get stuck in traffic. Dad sees a black, oblong thing floating in the sky. It's probably a plane. Except planes aren't black, don't have that shape, don't fly that low and make noise. A helicopter follows a couple moments later. Gets a call. It's his cousin. Yo, WTF, did you just see that? Dad asks where the airport is. It's on the direction opposite to where it was going. Asks what is on the direction it was going towards. It's a military base. 7. Be me. Be 14. Give free tours at this place called the Hay House in a medium town in Middle Georgia. Macon. Hear stories about it being haunted. Yeah right, fag. Close up building for night. House is like 100+ years old. Hear kids running. Be nope. Walking down from the second story and hit the light switch in security close. Look back up the stairs. Literal fucking ghost woman looking at me in like a black Victorian dress. Frozen, then just close my eyes and walk away. Open eyes. Gone. Talk to owner about it. People been hearing kids run and the lady since the house became a public museum/historic building. Quit next week. Goddamn community service hours though. 8. I actually have a real story about my black cat, pick related, that's him. He is actually super shy, but super vicious. He ripped open another cat's gut one time. Be me. Silly Amerifag, 18 at the time. Bring a nice looking classmate home after big party. We do the dirty. Cat walks in, didn't see him since I got home. Cat looks at classmate. Cat gives the longest, saddest moan I've ever heard in my life. Must have been 5 to 7 seconds long, super loud, super sad. Cat jumps on the bed, crawls right into woman's arms and cuddles up. Be me, surprised as fuck that my extra shy cat found someone he likes. Weirded out by moan, but think I found a new wingman. It's morning, parents have gone away on vacation. Cat still cuddling with woman. She is super stoked, loves my cat.jpg. She tries to leave, cat visibly trying to prevent her from leaving. Cat crying at the door after she goes. Cat doesn't leave the door until an hour or so later. Classmate died when she got home. She fell down her stairs and hit her head on a desk corner. 9. Hang in there, friend, this is long. I was on a canoeing trip in the Moosehead Lake system of Maine for 3 weeks. Only had one surreal experience, at about 2 weeks in. Couple of important things to note. While we were in the woods, the river had fairly well-maintained campsites, with most even having an outhouse. Also, like I mentioned, this happened 2 weeks in, and most of us had adapted to life in the woods. The last thing I want to bring up is the fact that we also had 2 hired guides. That out of the way, here is what happened. We are canoeing down a stretch of river, later in the day, probably an hour and a half or so from sunset. Everything is stunning, birds are singing and all that, and we're looking forward to doing one more set of rapids for the day. Going along a little bit further, when my stomachy drops. Start feeling antsy, like I need to get away, and don't know why. Listen carefully to the river around me. No wind, no birds, no conversation from the other canoes. I'm not even getting bitten by flies or mosquitoes. Everyone is looking uncomfortable and on edge. Guide informs us that he'd like to set up at the next campsite, which should be alongside this stretch of river. Everyone starts to protest this. Some of the other group members ask everyone if they are feeling antsy as well. Everyone agrees that this place isn't right and we should move on. The guide informs us that he will not let us run rapids at night, and that to portage we will literally be at the campsite, so we should at least look. We all paddle in cautious silence until we reach the site. So after a bit more paddling we make it to the campsite, still feeling off as ever. The place is a wreck. Not quite like a torn down sort of way, but more like a decrepit way. Fire pit is no more. All flat ground is covered in thorny bushes taking over, and the wood panels of the outhouse are rotting. This is a site clearly marked on all maps. Guide agrees it's pretty shit, so we decide to portage. This was not a long portage, maybe 300 feet. To do so we had to remove all our gear and carry it and the canoes around the rapids. I grab a couple of our packs and start walking down a trail that's supposed to lead to the other side of the rapids. Go about 50 feet before I step on a stick that goes through my shoe and into my foot. Great. So I sit down for a minute. Group continues. I guess like a minute later another kid steps wrong and twists ankle. People keep going. Towards the end of the path of the first passing, another kid falls down a ravine and misses his head on a rock by inches, still hurt though, so everyone makes it to the end, and we realize our guides aren't with us. We assume they're hauling stuff, so we head back to the canoes to grab more. The whole walk back we don't see them, and we start to break apart as a group at this point, as some kids stay behind to start packing gear into the canoes. Make it back to the campsite without seeing our guides, and yet they're still not here at the camp. We decide fuck it and start grabbing stuff. So on this second hauling trip, I carry another pack to the end, but was weighed down and went slower. As I go down the path, I see one of the people carrying a canoe directly away from the river into the forest. The path looks at the river the whole way. Shout to the kid, no response. Set down my pack and tap on his shoulder. Kid acts like he was daydreaming and just woke up. I point out that he's literally carrying a canoe directly away from the river and path, and he says something like, damn, guess I got lost lol. Similar walking into the woods behavior seen with a couple other people. We eventually get all our stuff moved though, and all our canoes loaded, and we're ready to leave. Except we still don't know where our guides are. Me and another kid run back to the first campsite along the trail, trying to find them, calling out all the while. Get to the campsite, and they aren't there. Me and friend turn to leave, and we hear our guides call out to us, they're at the campsite. Guide 1, oh there you are. Where did you all go? You're gonna have to hurry to portage all that stuff now. Me and friend look at each other, and back at them. Ask them where the fuck they went. What do you mean? We've been here at the camp. We literally have now made 4 trips to this site and not seen them or heard them once. Absolutely confused, but just wanting to leave that place, we run back down the path with our guides and canoe away. We make it around the next bend as the sun was setting, and we start to hear the forest again, so I know this is pretty tame, but I can't convey how unsettling this place was. It wasn't a feeling of being watched, more so just panic. If any of you are familiar with this sort of thing, I'd really like to know what it was. 10. I've shared this on here once before. My friend's dad is an immigrant from Mexico and he told us this story. For context, Mexicans hire people to lead them through the safest routes to the border. These guys are called coyotes. Friend's dad is crossing the Mexican desert with a group of other guys. Night falls and the coyote says, "We have to sleep here tonight." One of the big concerns is accidentally wandering into cartel territory, but the coyote insists that they're safe. Desert darkness, very little light besides the moon. People hear something skittering about, and one of the guys asks what that is. There are shadows everywhere from cacti, tall shrubs, large stones, etc. In a well-lit area between some shadows, they all see spiders running around. Friend's dad describes them as having bodies as big as a pineapple. Their legs were very long. They could easily walk over you while you sleep, and their legs wouldn't ever touch you. The guys are nervous, but the coyote tells them, "There's nowhere else to go. This is the safest place." Everyone's exhausted from walking all day anyway. They lie down to sleep. Friend's dad passes out with the sound of large spiders padding around the desert, only a few feet away. I asked him if maybe his fear didn't make his mind exaggerate their size, but he said they saw one in the morning all by itself. It ran off as they were walking by, and they got a good look at it. 11. This story is from my childhood growing up on a sailboat around the Channel Islands of California. Family is anchored at its usual spot at White's Landing, Catalina Island. It's summer, so lots of summer boaters from the mainland. Middle of the night, I wake up to loud sharp *bang* on the hull. Parents' room is at the stern, me and sister's room is at the bow. Something has struck the bow, me and sis realize. Sis is a few years younger, so she stays inside to handle damage control, while I go topside to see what happened. Father emerges from room. We exchange glances, then both get topside. We both run to the bow. 50 feet's catch, so it takes us few seconds. Catch is a type of sailboat, you lubbers. We both see 2 drunk, bloody mainlanders and their ruined popped rich boy inflatable. As it sinks into the liquid black of Davy Jones' locker, their boat had no air. It was just a fiberglass bottom sticking out of the water for a few seconds, then it sank. They must have been going extremely fast. Their skiff was capable when they hit us, because they bounced 10 to 15 feet away. Dad jumps in, "I'll track it to the rescue.pr." Mom takes over at the radio, calls for help. He is swimming where they went down, can't see or find them, they have sunk. Dad gets back aboard, nothing we can do except shine lights in the sea and wait for divers. Divers get there almost 40 minutes later, but it's deep water, moonless night. It takes them a long time just to get to the bottom. Soon they pull out 2 stiff white corpses. My dad tries to shield me, but I fucking saw them. MFW when I just witnessed 2 men drown. So the rest of the summer passes. I go to school for the winter, summer comes along again. We anchor in the same spot. I bring a few friends over to swim and hang out at the beach and spend the night. We decided to go night swimming, full moon night. We all are on the side of the boat over the lifelines, daring one another to jump first. Fucking pussies. Gif. I was literally about to jump to show what a Chad I was when I see two white faces, not pale, white, looking up at me from a few inches below the waves. I fucking scream. I was screaming bloody murder. Nobody else saw it, but they are spooked nonetheless. Remember last year 2 men drowned in this very spot. Realize it's the very same day, at the exact time it happened. No. We decide to go inside and try to sleep. I hear scratching on the outside of the hull, right below the waterline. Nobody else hears it. I was crying. Spent the night awake. Scratching persisted until about 2:15 or so. Friends leave in the morning, thinking I was a schizo. Parents believe me and we moved to a different spot that day. TLDR, I watched 2 men drown, then saw their faces in the ocean, the year after. 12. Be me. Early 20s, been doing a lot of camping. Decide to take a week-long trip around the edge of the desert in Queensland. Second night I find a track leading to a campsite on a sandy desert plateau, basically a giant sand dune with some short shrubs and trees. 50 kilometers from nearest main road, 100 from nearest town. Go to sleep in tent. Wake up sometime during the night, with a cold sweat and feeling absolutely terrified. Realize that over the sound of the wind, I can hear a dragging noise, like someone pulling a log through the sand. Stay awake for what feels like hours, hearing the dragging noise get quieter and quieter, too scared to open the tent. Eventually fall asleep again. Next morning I find a track carved into the sand, about 1 meter wide. It's about 10 meters from my tent. Immediately pack up and get the fuck out of there. Some scary stuff happens in the outback. 13. This one happened to my father. Not exactly paranormal, 100% scary. Be dad 1980s, get in a car accident. Multiple broken bones, fucked up spine, has got scoliosis now, skull fracture, ruptured lung. Another organ was fucked, I can't remember what. Has to go under the knife. Doctors trying to save him, looks like he isn't gonna make it. Apparently he was paralyzed, but he could still hear them, but not see. Doctors start talking about organ transplant for the boss. Doctors begin to cut him open while he is conscious but paralyzed. One doctor begins to argue that this man could easily be saved / what they are doing is wrong. Argument ensues. Second time this month. Boss needs another. You fucking do it then. Gets sewn back up. Lives. He says he was slipping in and out of consciousness through the whole thing. Vehemently states they were trying to take his organs on behalf of the boss while he was conscious. Needless to say, he is paranoid about surgery. 14. Mid to late 1980s. Eastern Europe. Dad is really into hiking. Has his favorite trail with old, very old, abandoned shacks that mountain people used to live in. Dad met some people in a bar in the closest town to the trail. Ends up going on the trail with some guy and 2 girls. They get to the shack, have a butt of wine, don't get too drunk though. My dad gets along with the guy and they talk literature, philosophy, etc. Girl go to sleep, bored. As dad said, the conversation he had with the guy was very deep, and when they got into philosophy, and soon religion, the conversation had a weird fever dream flow. Except for that wine they drank 2 hours plus ago, they're fully sober. Suddenly my dad feels absolutely fucking horrible, just pure evil in the air, despair and misery. The guy looks like he also felt it. The girls wake up. They don't say a single word. Both my dad and the guy start crying. It passes. Girls are confused. Both my dad and the guy have no idea what happened and they never met again. Fast forward a couple of years. Dad goes there with a girlfriend. They go into the same shack where he was with the two girls and the guy. The hole in the corner of the room for a bonfire is filled with rocks. Decides not to bother, goes to a different one, has a weird feeling anyway. They spend 2 nights there. Morning after second night, Dad is just sitting with the girl and smoking cigarettes and talking. Suddenly he hears a loud noise. The shack, the one where they were supposed to be staying, just fucking collapsed out of nowhere. I've actually been there twice. Went there once with my dad, when I was a kid, and everything was cool, nothing happened, I fell asleep early. The second time I was with my girlfriend and I just felt very uncomfortable the whole time. That was a year ago. 15. A few of the details in your story brought to mind a weird experience I had back home. I haven't thought about it in a long time. This happened in Sawyer County, Wisconsin. Area is quite rural. Brother and I would spend a lot of time outdoors exploring. Being young boys, we'd race from one spot to the next. He was older than me and he always won. One day we're racing to the base of this little hill. He beats me as usual, and I decide to walk the rest of the way. I can see my bro ascending the hill. Foot slips in a huge puddle of water, and I almost fall. When I regain my balance, I look up and brother is gone. The whole world looks dark, like when it's about to storm. I call out my brother's name, no response. Feeling nervous about the hill, I take a step backwards. Right into the same fucking puddle. Fall on my back, right into the water, splash. Gif. When I get back up, the whole world is normal again, bright and sunny. I hear my brother's voice. He's on the hill laughing at me. Nothing else happened. Sorry if it's kind of lame, but it's the weirdest thing I've experienced. When I read stories like this, it makes me want to find one of these anomalies and see where they lead. And film it. I also don't see how someone hasn't already done this. Maybe they have, but are trapped in another world. 16. I'm not familiar with boats landlubber here, so forgive the rough sketch. Mate of mine likes to go sailing off the coast. Spending an afternoon on the water. Hears a splash beside the boat, and looks over the side, sees a woman's face, clear as a day through the water. A pale redhead, her eyes are even sparkling in the bright sunlight. Strikingly beautiful. She's mouthing something, like she's trying to talk. Her face recedes into the darkness of the water like something slowly pulls her down. Friend is shocked, and decides to head back to shore. Sees some activity back where the other boats are, a small crowd of people bustling about. A woman drowned. My mate recognizes her as the woman in the water. Overcome with a deep sorrow, he leaves the crowd and rushes into his boat. He cries for a long time. He said the sadness he felt was unreal. It was like losing a loved one. But after a certain point he just felt normal again, and wondered why the fuck he'd gotten so emotional. The Irish and Scot believe that the surface of the water can sometimes be a portal to other worlds/dimensions. Apparently seeing stuff just below the waves is all too common. 17. I was halfway through my senior year in high school, when my parents decided to move to another state. They looked into ways that I could stay behind and finish school. We had an elderly neighbor who my parents had become close with, and they floated the idea of me staying at his house. He lived alone and had a second floor. They offered to pay him rent and I could help him with chores or whatever he needed while I was there. In return I could stay and finish my senior year. He was happy to help since he lived alone, and he needed help around the house. I was really glad I didn't have to move, so I agreed, and moved in once my parents had moved. A month goes by and everything is fine. My friend who lived down the street picks me up and drops me off after school. One day, my friend drops me off and heads home. I walked down the driveway to the back door, and when I get close, I see a trail of blood on the concrete leading up to the door, and the door is cracked open and a dried bloody head prints on the doorknob and smeared on the door. I start to feel adrenaline shooting through me, and get real cold, and I had no idea what to do. This was 1993, so before cell phones were a common thing. I walked in the house, trying to figure out what had happened, and there was more blood on the floor, leading up to the kitchen, where a towel was soaked in blood and draping over the sink. I turned and walked into the living room and saw the recliner he would sit in, and there was a big red spatter on the back, like he had been shot, while sitting in his chair. I called out his name, as loud as I could muster, and a few seconds later, I hear running water stop in the hallway bathroom. I hadn't identified the sound until it had stopped. I called out his name again, standing in the same place, starting to go into panic. No response. I realize that someone is there, and they are not responding. I completely panic and run out the back door. I sprint to my friend's house a few miles away, and get there completely out of breath. I ring the doorbell and knock, no answer, so I go around the corner to where his room is. I see him through the window and bang on the window. He turns around and sees me and is completely startled. He motions for me to go back to the door and he lets me in. I tell him what happened, and I call my parents. My dad said he was going to call the police and to wait there, he would call me back. My dad calls back about 10 minutes later, said the police were on the way, and to hang on, just wait there while they investigate. 2 hours goes by, my dad called back, and he is furious, starts yelling at me about lying and what was wrong with me. Maybe I wasn't mature enough to be there without them, tells me I'm in a lot of trouble, he was going to figure out how to handle this, and hangs up. I call him back and plead that I wasn't lying. He said the police went there, no blood. The neighbor had answered and said he had no idea what I was talking about. My friend said I could stay there, but all my stuff was at the other house. I stayed there that night, called my dad again the next day, crying and telling him I wasn't lying, and I was too afraid to go back. He said I would have to move to their new house and finish school. My friend even spoke with my dad and tried to explain I had shown up pale and shaking, and that I didn't seem to be lying. His parents let me stay there for a few weeks. I never picked up my clothes or laptop from the house, never returned his house key, or saw him again. I ended up finishing school living with different friends, and my parents always thought it was a cry for attention. I still have no idea what had happened there. 18. So I guess it's time to drop this one. Been saving it for a while. Mood is right. Thread is spooky. Be my grandfather. WW2 Gato class submarine crewman. Sub is out on patrol east of Japan somewhere, hunting some smallish Japanese Coast Guard ships. Everyone is deathly silent so as not to give away position to listening ships. Sudden everyone hears whispering in Japanese. Obviously nobody could translate. He said it sounded like a young man's voice, but some other voices, women and men, were whispering under the main voice in unison. Suddenly the electricity goes out. Absolutely, Doc. The whisper rises to a yell, then a scream. Screaming stops, electricity comes back on. Everyone scared shitless. Then everyone hears a long scraping all the way down the hull, from bow to stern, as if fingernails were trying to rip the metal hull apart. Keep in mind they are probably 200 feet deep at them. A week passes. They have sunk 2 small merchant ships and are headed back to refuel and get more torps. He says they all hear quiet singing in Japanese, then something begins tapping on the hull, to the beat of the singing. I showed him the Twinkle Twinkle Little Star song from Dead Space, and he says it was almost exactly like that except in Japanese. Some of the crewmen faint. Grandad said he felt extremely nauseous at this point. One of the officers has a heart attack. He says he can't really explain the tension or fright in those moments, but he has never been more scared in his life. He was trapped in a metal box, hundreds of feet below the surface, tormented by Japanese water spirits, his words, not mine. Once they were out of Japanese waters, they surfaced for air and let the crew stretch out. On the hull at the base of the conning tower is a line of Japanese characters. Some crewmen copy it on paper and translate it into black water, black ship, black souls, black curse. Says there were 4 parallel scratches along the starboard side, bow to stern. 19. Some children's hospital not far from me. For children with serious illnesses and problems that they're unlikely to survive. For decades, grieving parents make accusations that the kids are basically being killed for their organs, and the ones who die naturally are having their organs taken from them. Hospital completely denies this and says the high death rate is because the children have serious issues and that's why they're in the first place. About 15 years ago, one set of parents bring this all up again, because they requested the body to bury, but instead the hospital cremated the body without their consent, and just gave them an urn full of ashes. They explain they started that process a few years earlier because it was too heartbreaking for the families to receive the full bodies and it was easier if they were cremated beforehand. But the parents claim it's so there's no proof any of the organs were taken. Eventually they get in touch with other parents who did receive bodies. It wasn't like the bodies were in a body bag, they were already in sealed coffins ready to be buried when they gave them to the parents. More than a few have the coffins exhumed and opened. Totally empty except for some baby clothes and scrap metal to act as weight. No sign of any body at all, no bones or nothing. One family empties their urn and finds unironic cigarette butts among the ash. Whole place gets raided and people start getting sentenced. One of the top doctors/surgeons, who'd been there like 30 plus years, comes clean and admits they took the organs. Refuses to answer if any kids were murdered, refuses to answer what they did with the organs. Turns out they didn't even have a crematoria. Dig up the grounds, and there's literally thousands of children's bodies. Dr/surgeon agrees to explain everything that happened in return for a sentence reduction afterwards. Sees agrees. Hangs himself 2 days later. 20. This one is 100% real. Go ahead and look it up. Well documented. Most of you have heard this story before. I'd like to tell it from the perspective of those who saw it firsthand. BU, German soldier WW1. Fighting Russian dogs in northeast Poland. Lay siege to a fort at the beginning of July. You've got 30 heavy siege guns, 30 artillery batteries, 14 infantry battalions. Up against 900 drunk Ruskies, half-errant even soldiers, just militia. Somehow they fight all the way into August. Fucking tired. Deficit.jpg. Decide it's time to send some chlorine and bromine gas on their direction. Grass turns black, frogs, birds, insects all lie dead on the ground. Cheap Russian bitches don't even have gas masks. Keck. Us German infantry boys stroll towards the fort. I think we'll tacithize.gif. Suddenly, all at once, bloody bandaged Russians jump out of their hiding spots. All of them look as if they are dead. Coughing up blow. Oh my god, that's pieces of their lungs. Literally attacked by zombies. Fuck these.x. German boys fucking run. Runs so hard gets caught in their own wire traps. Attack of the Dead Men.